wanted to do here I want to show what's involved in making Foamies work with a hexagon grid. This is a 2.5-inch hexagon, and I'm going to use a pointer so I can stand off and show you what the issues are. First of all, the thing to remember is that you have to decide when doing the grid if you want the roads to split the hexes like that. I've chosen not to do that. So in order to have the intersections of a road properly laid out, I'm putting the intersection at one end of the hex. In your view, it's this side. So this is an intersection template you see right there, and I've already cut this piece of foamy to shape that. And you may ask yourself right away, why did I cut this template in this way? And you can see why. The idea is that the roads have to maintain an orientation that does not split or come to the edge, the perimeter, splitting the line between two hexes. So we don't want the road to split the hexagon like that, because that would actually create, I believe, and this is what the anticipation was, that would create more problems than this method does. So I'm going to show you why I did this. So I wanted to have the intersection at this end of the hex, okay, this side. And in order to do it now so that it matches, I cut the Foamies road strip so that it matches up and then creates a straight road all the way down. This, of course, precludes the fact that you must then have further intersections will have to be coming to the joining of the road in this fashion. Okay, so the road length itself has to take into consideration that you're going to push it from the typical, from the typical endpoint for a strip. You're actually going to push that road strip a little bit more. That brings up that problem. Okay, and then when you continue with your road section, it's going to have to be on this end of the road, this side of the road, this edge. So this is the situation, this is the problem of doing the roads in this fashion, where you are cutting across, we'll call it the grain. The grain of the hex is north-south, not east-west. All the hexes are oriented with the flats being the top of the map and the bottom of the map. The idea is the game is played, or the hex grid is laid out with the flats parallel with the length of the board. So, like I said, the reason we don't want the intersection to be in the middle is because that might actually cause more problems. Okay, your roads will be problematic for going into the middle of the hex like this. This is again just a guess. I haven't proved it yet, but by going to one end, the road can then shoot. And this is the thing about the American Civil War too. The road can shoot at an angle. You see how now it's obeying the edge of the hexagon layout. The lines at the top and the bottom, east-west, we'll call it north-south. So that is, and we've seen this, especially at Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, and Murfreesboro and other battlefields. It was common for roads to intersect other roads in this way. It seems to be the case at anyway. And when it comes to larger towns, for whatever reason, these roads intersected like that. You can see it on many maps. They fly in at an angle and then they create an intersection. I do not know the urban reasons for creating that, but that's in fact the way many roads look. So then also bear in mind, we already talked about this, and we talked about shooting down this way, but then let's look at if this was a piece of road section We would put that on there, and then we would continue with our road in that fashion, following the lines of the hexes. Okay? Now, if you wanted to get away from that, break that spell, and put the roads down the middle, see? Here's what I'm saying. Traditionally, with a hexagon grid, you have that road going right down the middle of the hex, right in between the two. So right in between the two corners is where the roads are going. Okay? So in order to do that now, I would have to have this piece cut, instead of such a sharp angle, a lesser angle. Actually, it is, I believe, just flat, right? Right, there we go. So just a flat works. That's fine. But I had to have this extra piece in there in order for it to work. So now we've got our roads going down the traditional method, which is right down the middle of the hex. That's fine. And over here we've got the road going down the middle of the hex. Here you see I've got other templates already cut. So if I'm not confusing you, I'm almost confusing myself. But you get the basic idea, the restrictions of how to do this. Another way, of course, to get around other issues for these intersections is I'll demonstrate with the other templates I have. In other words, here I'm cutting the template for the river. It's the same shape. So we'll use this over here. Now this is going to be the road coming off like in that fashion. Okay? So there comes the road, and now you can continue your road like that if you wish. So the length of these pieces doesn't have to change. It's only really a problem when you want to match up this piece of the foamy with this piece of the template. And because of its odd orientation, you may have to have a special piece. But in this case, you could just have a straight piece like we just showed right here. That solves the problem there. So now the road's back to normal. But why can't you have, like we said, here we'll cover it again. Why can't we have the intersection in the middle of this hex? Okay, what's stopping us? Well, let's leave that, actually, leave that there. We'll take the road section and we'll put it like this. We'll say that this is going to be an intersection. And we'll take another one and we'll put it like this. Now there you see this is a sharp angle, probably 45 or 60. Now if we were to do it like this, see what happens? Now the road is splitting, except this one. Every other hex is being split by the road. Split here, not there, split here. So again, if you look at it in the distance, if we had the intersection in the middle of the hex, that's what would happen. This part of the road would be split between these two hexes. It's filling this hex, split between these two, filling this one, and split between these two. Now, you can imagine if you put a unit on there, or if there was a combat situation happening, player might say, well, where are they? Which hex are they in? If they're getting the benefit of the road, of course, they're in road column, and they're probably really, they technically would be a long, unable to fight. But let's assume that the unit is right here. As a matter of fact, I'll grab a unit. Let me grab one. First one I came to is a cavalry unit, which is almost apropos. So here's the cavalry unit on the road. Okay. Now let's put the cavalry unit in the hex. It's not on the road. Clearly it is not on the road. So, taking this away, if we were to move this piece and do it like this, and we'll carry this on even though it's not cut at the angle. So now we put the unit exactly back where, and look where it is. Now it's on the road. If it was to turn this way, it would be on the road. Okay? If the road went off in this direction, like I said, that really sharp angle, okay, it's on the road. It's on the road. It's on the road. It's not splitting the hex. So this is the mathematical and geometric issues with using the hexagon grid. Okay? You don't want to split the hex because it causes a little bit of visual discrepancy. So again, back to here. This is the road, how it's going to be the intersection. And that pretty much basically covers all the issues. Now let's replace this template with another one. That's a full intersection right there. Let's replace it with this one here. As you can see, this is a fork. Now it's not cut at an angle, although it absolutely could be, because maintaining, again, maintaining along this line, splitting the hex this way, see? I said splitting, but don't confuse that with the other splitting I mentioned earlier. Now we're in this kind of a shape. The road is in this hex. It's in this hex. It's in this hex. It's in this hex. It's not split at all between any hexes. So coming off this way, this fork, is how it would happen. Now you also note it's not angled. That's a straight cut. So that means we're going to use the road at this angle. There we are, back to the normal way you've seen roads in a hexagon grid, just like any board game. Okay, there we go. He's going right down the middle of the hex without any issues. He's joining up to this guy with not any problem. Okay, so the reason that we don't have this cut straight is because there is no straight. You see, it has to match the angle of the hex on both sides. If you cut it straight, yeah, sure, that would make it easier, right? To put the piece right there. I suppose you could do it that way. You could, instead of cutting these at an angle, cut them straight, but then what happens to your template, right? You can either cut pieces to fit here or cut this differently. It's up to you. I suppose that's really what it comes down to. But you get the idea. You get the gist. Okay, now let's look at another template. This is the one that has an angle on it. Why? Well, you'll see. Okay, now we're going to play with that angle right there. Again, here we go. There's your fork. But you'll see it's a straight fork. It's a T is what it is. Okay, so he matches up really good. Now, if we were to make it at an angle, he fits okay, even though this is a little bit odd because of the way it's cut. It's acceptable. Okay, so now there we are again with that kind of a fork. If we were to change it, let's change the angle so you can see another demonstration of it. Let's change it like this. Okay, we can do it like this. Even this could be bizarre, right? Does that even work? I suppose you could say that works. All right. Interesting. Right? Again. Okay. It's in the hex, in the hex, in the hex, in the hex. It's not split between the two hexes. It's either in a hex or it's not. That kind of demonstrates that. It's a weird looking fork, but that's the way it is. So again, let's try it. Look this way. Okay. Let's add our little joiner piece type. Okay. We'll do it again. Here we are. We are going to match that up. So we've matched it up and we've got the one piece cut. We don't have to get a new piece cut or anything like that, even though it takes nothing to cut a new piece. The fact is this angled piece now matches up this perfectly. It's as if you had cut this straight, but you cut it at an angle because you got this little guy in there. So he matches up to this. Well, actually, he's not even actually needed. Okay, there we go. That little guy's not even needed. He would be needed in certain other cases, like you wanted to change the angle. Let's turn him upside down, put him like that, and let's take this guy and make him go flying down. Again, we see we're following the line of the hex. Between these two hexes, we're following it. And I know it sounds like I'm being redundant, but I'm trying to explain this as much as I can so you can witness what's involved in doing this. You see what happened here. Okay, let's take it away. Okay, maybe we'll flip this over because it's Foamies, right? If I cut them from Foamies, they're a dime a dozen. Well, they're 99 cents for a massive sheet. So look at the varieties I can get. I can cut these anytime I want. I'm not locked into the terrain, if you will. Okay, let's look at this again from a different angle. There's our piece joining up and following. I know I said split because that's essentially what you're splitting this hex, but it's actually the road is in this hex. So there's your line and you're following it down. Now I understand that you may not initially think that this is the right way of doing this, but until I can prove myself otherwise, I believe this is actually correct. To avoid having an intersection in the middle of the hex is the key. It also applies to roads and to rivers. We'll see that. Well, we don't need to. Imagine this is a river. It's the same concept. The same restrictions apply. Okay, so did we do the other guy? Let's take this guy away and we did this guy. Yeah. So here's, by the way, look at this. Don't even really need this. Once you've got these pieces cut at an angle for other purposes, now you don't even need that extension coming off that template. You see? But it doesn't matter for us, because we've already got these pieces cut flat to flat and so on. It's okay. We're good. Just that we got a little bit of an extended piece right there, which is going to throw off this. You may not see it in the camera view, but off the camera here, this is actually matching up perfectly. But this little guy, this little extension right here might throw you off. So it's almost as if don't need this. But then again, who knows? Anyway, it doesn't matter because they're so cheap, you can make a million of them. Right? And these things you can tape down to your surface like you've seen here. This is that lifelike grass mat that I've drawn the hexagons on. And it's not that it's inexpensive, it's just that it's really convenient. Most hobby stores, Hobbytown USA, will have these. So you can get them anytime you want, put the grid on there. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes, so be careful. There are some mathematical errors that creep in, so when you start drawing your hexagons, be advised you may have to start shifting a little bit because of the thickness of your pen. Believe it or not, the thickness of the marker you're using is going to add up after a while, and you're going to start to witness that it's being off. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because when I start drawing the maps and putting the hex grids on, I usually start, as you know, flat in the top left-hand corner. This is parallel with the length of the mat. Okay, so this would be upper left-hand corner, hex 1-1, you would call it. So when you start drawing your hexes across the game table, and you start tracing them in, you are going to, at some point in the middle, start to witness discrepancies because of the thickness of the pen. Okay, so what you got to do is you got to take that into consideration and start to adjust your template. So the best thing to do when you're tracing is simply trace one area. Now remember, my template that I use for this is a region. So I trace a region, I move the template, trace another region, and move the template, trace another region. And that's how I'm able to do it so fast. So it's bing, 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 and then afterwards I go in and draw the individual hexes. But by using the regional concept, at least you'll see when the discrepancy starts to creep in. And then when you go to draw your individual hexes, that's when you can compensate. Because believe it, it is an issue when you're doing your own hexagons. That's why we prefer to paint them or digitize them printed already. So that's the reason things are like this. Having to draw them yourself is, sure, fast and easy and there's no shipping involved, but you got to bear in mind that mathematical error, again, because of the thicknesses of the pen. And that seems to be the case. Even the 1,000th of an inch or 100th of an inch off on that hexagon after 100 hexes, it is going to start to add up. And then you're combining that with the thickness of the pen, you're pushing, pushing, pushing until eventually you get to one end of the table and you're like, whoa, what happened? How could I be off almost a half of a hex, or say 2 inches or so? Well, that's the reason why. You're 100 hexes 100 times, you're off 1/10 of an inch at the end. or in the middle of the table. Sometimes in the middle of the mat you're tracing, you might start to witness an error based on where you start. That's why I would suggest that this was the end of the table, this was the edge of the table. Put that hexagon grid template down, trace, and then trace, and then trace, and then trace, and then move the template up, and then trace again, and keep going like that until you see where those discrepancies start to happen. That's the best way to do it.